Hello again, friends. It's me, Mrs. Rook. Yesterday, when I was reading through some of our spelling words for this week, I mentioned some of the rules for how we decide when we're going to use OI and when we are going to use OY. And the first rule that I mentioned is the very first one that is up on this screen. So we know, first off, that when we're trying to make that OI sound, we can either use OI or we can use OY. So how do we know for certain which one to use, or what context clues can we use to help us decide when we're not certain? Well, in a one syllable word, so what are some one syllable words? Boy, toy, ones that we can do one beat. Um, in a one syllable word, we would use OI in the middle of a word and OY at the end of a word. So let's look at some one syllable words where that's the case. Coin, we use OI in the middle of the word. Come over here to the one syllable word boy, toy, joy, OY is used at the end. And again, looking over here, everything that we have is one syllable. OI is used in the middle for all of these. Soil, foil, boil. Okay, what do you do though in longer words that are more than one syllable? So whenever you have a longer word that is more than one syllable, you're going to use OI in the middle of that syllable, and OY is going to be used either at the end of the word again, or you would use OY before a vowel. So what am I talking about? What's an instance of this? Well, look at the word loyal. You would not spell it Loial because you wouldn't want that I to butt up against that A. So if you're in the middle of a word, you want to use OY if there's a vowel that's going to follow. But for any others, you would always use OI. There are some instances where you're going to use OI or OY at the beginning of the sentence, and those are just what we would call little special scenarios that break the rules. What are those? Well, oink, we use OI at the beginning of the word, or oil, we use OI at the beginning of the word. What's a word where we would use OY at the beginning? If you think through the list we went through yesterday, oyster was one. So there's always going to be an exception sometimes to the rules, but for the most part, you can memorize these right here. So OI in the middle of the word for a one syllable word, or if it's a longer word, OI would be in the middle of the syllable itself. And most of the time, almost all of the time, OY is going to be at the end of a word for both your one syllable and your longer. And in the middle of a word or in the middle of a syllable when there's a vowel that follows. So that should help to make your life a little easier with knowing when to choose between OI versus OY. Think OI, middle, OY, end, and there's just a couple little exceptions.